I stood in the grand ballroom of my sister Stephanie's wedding reception, holding my 5-year-old daughter Lily's hand, feeling the weight of every eye in the room crushing down on me. The crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting dancing lights across the sea of designer dresses and tailored suits. I wore the only decent dress I owned, a simple navy blue number I'd worn to job interviews. Lily's dress. I'd sewn myself from discount fabric, but she looked beautiful. Then Stephanie's voice cut through the elegant music. She stood at the microphone, radiant in her $10,000 wedding gown, and said those words I'll never forget. "This is my widowed sister, a cheap single mom." My mother Patricia laughed loudly from the head table and added, "Anyone interested in taking her home?" The room erupted in cruel laughter. My face burned. Lily squeezed my hand tighter, confused by the meanness she sensed but couldn't fully understand. I wanted to disappear, to run, to protect my daughter from this ugliness. But then something extraordinary happened. The groom, Derek, stood up from his seat beside my sister. He walked away from Stephanie, who stood frozen at the microphone, her smile fading. Derek came straight toward me and Lily. He knelt down, looked my daughter in the eyes with genuine warmth, and took her small hand in his. Then he stood, faced the silent crowd, and declared in a voice that carried to every corner of that ballroom, "I'll take them." The room went absolutely still. Let me back up and explain how I ended up in that nightmare. My name is Dawn, and 2 years ago, I had everything. I was married to Mark, the love of my life since college. We met when I was 21, married at 23, and welcomed Lily when I was 24. Mark was a successful architect with a thriving practice. We lived in a beautiful home in the suburbs, took vacations, planned for the future. Life felt secure and full of promise. Then one rainy Tuesday afternoon, a police officer knocked on my door. There had been an accident on the highway. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel and crossed the median. Mark never had a chance. He died instantly. I was 26 years old, and suddenly alone with a 3-year-old daughter, and a world that felt like it had stopped making sense. The grief nearly destroyed me. For months, I could barely function. I'd wake up reaching for Mark, forgetting for just a second that he was gone, and then reality would crash down again. Lily kept me going. She needed me to be strong, to provide, to be both mother and father now. So I pulled myself together as best I could. Mark's death left us in financial trouble I hadn't anticipated. His business partner bought out his share of the firm for much less than it was worth, taking advantage of my devastated state. The life insurance payout was smaller than expected due to some technicality in the policy. Our savings drained quickly between funeral costs and living expenses. Within 6 months, I had to sell our home and move into a small 2-bedroom apartment across town. I took freelance graphic design work, whatever I could get. Some months were better than others. I learned to stretch every dollar, shop at thrift stores, cook meals that could last for days. Lily never complained. She was so young when Mark died that her memories of him were already fading, which broke my heart in a different way. My mother Patricia and my sister Stephanie lived across the city in the house I grew up in. Growing up, I always knew Stephanie was the favorite. She was the baby, born when I was 2, and from the moment she arrived, she commanded all the attention. She was prettier than me, more outgoing, more charming. I was the responsible older sister, the one who got decent grades and stayed out of trouble but never quite sparkled the way Stephanie did. When Mark was alive and successful, my mother treated me with respect. She bragged about my architect husband and our nice home. She acted like a proud mother. But after Mark died and my financial situation collapsed, her attitude shifted dramatically. Suddenly, I was an embarrassment. she stopped inviting me to family events. When I did see her, she'd make comments about my worn-out shoes or my need to find a rich man to solve my problems. Stephanie followed Mom's lead. Before Mark's death, she and I had been close. Or so I thought. We'd go shopping together, have sister lunches, share secrets. But as my circumstances deteriorated and hers improved, she grew distant. She started dating Derek about 8 months ago and became completely obsessed with landing him. Derek was 32, a successful CEO of a tech company, wealthy and handsome. Stephanie saw him as her ticket to the life she'd always wanted. My mother became equally obsessed with Derek. She helped plan elaborate dates for Stephanie, coached her on what to say, bought her expensive outfits to impress him. When Derek proposed after 6 months, Mom went into overdrive planning the wedding. It had to be perfect, lavish, a showcase event. The wedding budget swelled to over $40,000. I wondered how Mom was paying for it on her retirement income. But I didn't ask questions I should have. Despite how they treated me, I still helped with wedding preparations. I designed the invitations, programs, and thank you cards for free. I spent hours addressing envelopes, coordinating with vendors, doing whatever Stephanie asked. Part of me hoped that if I was helpful enough, things would go back to how they used to be between us. Part of me just wanted Lily to see family coming together for happy occasions, to have some sense of normalcy and belonging. Stephanie complained constantly about my contributions. The invitation design wasn't elegant enough. I couldn't afford to buy an expensive bridesmaid dress, so I wasn't in the wedding party. I offered to sew something appropriate, but Stephanie said that would look cheap. She told me to just wear whatever I had and sit in the back. Mom agreed, saying it was probably better if I didn't draw attention to myself anyway. Still, I brought Lily to the wedding. I'd worked extra hours to afford a small gift. Lily was excited to wear the dress I made her, with its soft yellow fabric and white ribbons. She practiced her manners and couldn't wait to see Aunt Stephanie as a bride. I told myself that no matter how Mom and Stephanie acted toward me, this was still family. Lily deserved to be part of family celebrations. The ceremony was beautiful. Stephanie looked stunning. Derek seemed kind and attentive, though I noticed he kept glancing around the church with an odd expression I couldn't quite read. The reception was even more elaborate, held at an exclusive country club, with elaborate floral arrangements and a 10-tier cake. I found a table near the back and tried to blend in. Then came the moment that changed everything. Stephanie took the microphone to thank her guests. She went through the usual acknowledgments, then said she wanted to introduce some family members. My stomach dropped when she gestured toward me. I wasn't prepared for what came next. Her words, dripping with false sympathy and real contempt, cut me to the bone. My mother's cruel joke made it worse. The laughter from the guests felt like physical blows. But Derek's response shocked everyone, most of all Stephanie. After declaring he'd take me and Lily, he turned back to face my sister and my mother at the head table. His expression had transformed from the pleasant groom into something cold and disgusted. He spoke clearly so every guest could hear him. The wedding is off. I can't marry someone with such a cruel heart. I came here today, hoping I was wrong about what I'd discovered about this family. But I see now, I wasn't. Stephanie, your treatment of your sister is unforgivable. Patricia, you should be ashamed of yourself as a mother. Stephanie let out a shriek. The microphone she was holding fell to the floor with a loud feedback screech. Mom stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. What are you doing? Stephanie cried out. Derek, this is our wedding day. It was supposed to be, Derek replied. But I won't tie myself to someone who mocks their own family, who laughs at someone who's struggling and grieving. I thought I knew you, Stephanie, but I was wrong. He walked past me toward the exit. As he passed, he said quietly, I'm sorry you had to endure that, Dawn. You deserve so much better." Then he was gone, leaving the ballroom in absolute chaos. Guests started murmuring loudly. Some looked shocked. Others seemed to think this was the most entertaining wedding they'd ever attended. Stephanie stood frozen for a moment, then burst into hysterical tears. She pointed at me across the room and screamed, "You ruined my wedding! This is your fault!" Mom rushed to Stephanie's side, shooting daggers at me with her eyes. Several of Stephanie's friends clustered around her, shooting me dirty looks. I grabbed Lily, who was now crying because of all the shouting, and rushed out of the ballroom. Behind me, I could hear Stephanie wailing and my mother yelling. But I didn't stop. I just wanted to get my daughter out of there. I drove home in a daze, Lily sobbing in the back seat. When I tried to explain what happened, I couldn't find words that would make sense to a 5-year-old. I just held her and told her it wasn't her fault, that some grown-ups were just mean sometimes, and that we'd be okay. But I wasn't sure we would be. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Stephanie called 6 times in a row. Mom left furious voicemails. They blamed me for everything. Said I must have done something to turn Derek against Stephanie, that I was jealous and spiteful. I turned off my phone and tried to process what had just happened. 2 days passed in a blur. I kept my phone off, unable to face the continuing barrage of angry messages from my mother and sister. Lily asked repeatedly why Aunt Stephanie was so mean, and why Grandma laughed when people were being cruel. I gave vague answers about grown-ups having problems, but inside I felt utterly lost. On Wednesday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was brief but shocking. "We need to talk. It's about Mark." The sender identified himself as Derek. My hands started shaking. How did Derek have my number? More importantly, what did he know about Mark? My late husband had been dead for 2 years. What possible connection could there be between Derek and the man I'd loved and lost? I stared at that message for 10 minutes, my mind racing through possibilities. Finally, I responded, "How did you know Mark?" Derek's reply came quickly. "We were best friends in college. I only found out after the engagement that Stephanie was your sister. I'd been trying to find you since I heard about Mark's death. Can we meet? There's so much you need to know." My heart pounded. Mark had mentioned his college roommate Derek a few times over the years, but they'd lost touch after graduation when Derek moved overseas for work. I'd never met him, never seen photos. It never occurred to me that my sister's fiancé could be the same person. I agreed to meet him at a quiet coffee shop near my apartment. I asked my neighbor, Helen, a kind 70-year-old widow who sometimes watched Lily, to keep an eye on my daughter for an hour. Then I drove to the meeting, my stomach in knots. Derek was already there, sitting in a corner booth. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept since the wedding. When he saw me, he stood and offered a sad smile. "Dawn, I'm so sorry we had to meet under these circumstances. Mark talked about you constantly back in college. He was so proud when you got married." I sat down across from him, clutching my coffee cup. "Please tell me what's going on. I don't understand any of this." Derek took a deep breath. "After I graduated, I took a job in Singapore. Mark and I tried to stay in touch, but you know how it is. Life gets busy. Emails become less frequent. We lost contact for years. I only moved back to the States last year. One of the first things I did was try to look up old friends. That's when I found out about Mark's accident." His voice caught with genuine emotion. I was devastated. Mark was like a brother to me. I wanted to reach out to you, to offer support, but I couldn't find current contact information. Your social media accounts were private or deleted. I thought about hiring someone to help me locate you, but I didn't want to seem intrusive when you were grieving. Then I met Stephanie. It was at a networking event for tech companies. She approached me. We started talking. She was charming and beautiful. We started dating. She never mentioned having a sister at first. When she finally did, she only referred to you as Dawn, never by your married name. It wasn't until wedding planning was well underway that I saw your last name on a list and realized who you were. I felt like I'd been punched. So you knew before the wedding that I was Mark's widow? Derek nodded. Yes, but not until about 3 weeks ago. When I realized, I was thrilled. I thought finally I could connect with you, express my condolences properly, maybe help out if you needed anything. Mark would have wanted that, but Stephanie told me you were very private, that you'd specifically asked not to be contacted or bothered about Mark anymore because it was too painful. She said you were moving on and didn't want reminders of the past. She made it sound like reaching out would be cruel to you. I respected what I thought were your wishes, but at the wedding, Derek continued, his voice hardening, I saw the truth. The way your own mother and sister treated you was monstrous. The things they said, the public humiliation. In that moment, I understood that Stephanie had been lying about you. She'd deliberately kept me away from you. When I saw you standing there holding your daughter's hand, enduring that cruelty, I knew I couldn't go through with marrying someone capable of that. Tears streamed down my face. I'd been holding so much pain inside for so long. Thank you for standing up for me. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, Derek said firmly. Mark was my best friend. You were the most important person in his world. Protecting his family is the least I could do. But Dawn, there's more you need to know. That's really why I needed to see you. He pulled out a folder from his briefcase. Before Mark died, he made arrangements. He had a will, and he set up a trust fund for Lily's education. Did you know about this? I shook my head, confused. Mark and I had talked about estate planning, but we were young. We kept putting it off, thinking we had time. After he died, a lawyer contacted me about his will, but it was straightforward. I inherited everything, which wasn't much after debts were paid. Derek's expression grew grim. That's not the whole story. Mark had a separate account, one his business partner didn't know about. He'd been saving aggressively. There was over $500,000 in it, specifically earmarked for Lily's future education expenses. Until Lily turns 18, you were supposed to receive monthly support payments of $2,000 to help with her care. I gasped. That's impossible. I never received anything like that. I would remember. Derek slid papers across the table. I know. That's because someone intercepted it. Mark set up the trust with a lawyer he thought he could rely on. Someone recommended by your mother. The lawyer's name is Gerald Thompson. I recognized the name. Gerald had been friends with my mother for years. He'd handled some legal matters for her in the past. Derek continued. After I started digging into this, I found some very disturbing information. Gerald has been managing that trust. Yes, but the money hasn't been going to you. Over the past 2 years, $48,000 has been withdrawn. The withdrawal authorizations have your signature on them. But I never signed anything, I protested. I know, Derek said gently. They're forgeries. Someone has been stealing from your daughter's trust fund. And I'm almost certain it's your mother. With Gerald's help, he showed me bank statements and withdrawal records. Each month, like clockwork, $2,000 disappeared from the account. The signatures looked somewhat like mine, but not quite right. The address listed for the deposits was my mother's house, not my apartment. My mother has been stealing from my child? The betrayal cut even deeper than the wedding humiliation. Derek nodded grimly. I believe so. And Dawn, I think I know where the money went. Your sister's wedding cost about $40,000. That's almost exactly what's been stolen over 2 years. The room spun. My daughter's money, the security Mark had tried to provide for her future, had paid for the wedding where my sister mocked me and my mother offered me up for ridicule. The cruelty was breathtaking. What can I do? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We go to the police, Derek said. We bring charges for fraud and theft. I have a good attorney who can help. We'll get that money back for Lily, and we'll make sure they face consequences. For the first time in 2 years, I felt a spark of something other than grief and exhaustion. It felt like anger, righteous, and burning. Yes, I said. Let's do it. The next morning, I woke up determined. Derek had given me copies of all the documents he'd found. I looked at those forged signatures, at the stolen money meant for my daughter's future, and felt fury I didn't know I was capable of. I drove to my mother's house, the house where I'd grown up, where family photos still lined the hallways, showing happier times that now felt like lies. I rang the doorbell repeatedly until Mom answered, looking annoyed. Stephanie was there too, her eyes red and puffy from crying. When she saw me, her expression twisted into rage. How dare you show your face here? You ruined everything. I pushed past them into the living room and threw the papers onto the coffee table. I know about the trust fund. I know you've been stealing Lily's money. I know you paid for Stephanie's wedding with money Mark left for his daughter. Mom's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. Mark didn't leave any trust fund. He died broke, leaving you with nothing. You're inventing fantasies. Stephanie picked up the papers, glancing at them. Where did you get these? Did Derek give them to you? He's trying to turn you against us because he's embarrassed about canceling the wedding. These are bank records, I said, my voice shaking. They show 2 years of theft. Your signatures are forged. This is fraud. I'm going to the police. Mom laughed. Actually laughed. Go ahead, Dawn. You have no proof it was me. Even if that account exists, you can't prove I took anything. And who do you think the police will believe? A respected retired school teacher or a struggling single mother who's clearly unstable? Stephanie added with venom. You already ruined my wedding. Now you want to destroy Mom too? You're pathetic. You've always been jealous of me, and now you're making up lies because Derek chose to help you instead of marrying me. I'm calling my lawyer, I said, pulling out my phone. Mom's voice turned ice cold. If you pursue this, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll tell everyone you're an unfit mother. I'll report you to child services. You'll lose Lily. Her threat hit like a physical blow. Would she really go that far? Looking at her hard expression, I realized she absolutely would. I left their house shaking with rage and fear. I called Derek and told him what happened. He said his attorney would help, that we'd fight this together. But I felt the situation spiraling beyond my control. That afternoon, I went to see Gerald Thompson at his law office downtown. His receptionist made me wait for 45 minutes before finally showing me into his office. Gerald was 62, with silver hair and an expensive suit. He smiled at me with practiced warmth that didn't reach his eyes. Mrs. Dawn, what can I do for you? I want to know about my husband's trust fund, the one you've been managing for Lily. His smile didn't waver. I'm afraid you're mistaken. I handled some basic estate matters after Mark's death, but there was no trust fund. If someone has told you otherwise, they're either confused or lying to you. I have bank records, I said, pulling them out. Gerald barely glanced at them. Those could be fabricated. Anyone can create fake documents these days. Mrs. Dawn, I understand you've been under tremendous stress. Losing a spouse is devastating, but making wild accusations won't help your situation. My husband set up that fund before he died. You're stealing from my daughter. Gerald's expression hardened. That's a serious accusation. If you continue to make such claims, I'll be forced to sue you for defamation. You're a struggling single mother living in a small apartment and working unstable freelance jobs. You can't afford a lawyer, and you certainly can't afford to be sued. Furthermore, his voice dropped to something almost threatening. If I hear that you're making these accusations publicly, I'll be compelled to report to Child Protective Services that you appear to be experiencing mental health issues that may endanger your child. Courts take those reports very seriously. I felt sick. He was openly threatening me, knowing I had no resources to fight back. I left his office in tears. That evening, things got worse. Derek called with bad news. Stephanie had hired a lawyer and was suing him for $50,000, claiming breach of promise to marry. The lawyer argued that Derek had led Stephanie to believe they'd marry. She'd incurred expenses based on that promise, and his last-minute abandonment had caused her severe emotional distress. Additionally, Derek said heavily, Patricia has been calling my business partners and major clients, spreading rumors that I was having an affair with you while engaged to Stephanie. She's claiming that you seduced me to ruin your sister's happiness. Some of my investors are concerned about the scandal. My company's reputation is being damaged. I'm so sorry, I whispered. This is all my fault. No, Derek said firmly. This is their fault for being cruel, manipulative people. But Dawn, I need to be honest with you. I have to focus on protecting my business right now. I can't be as involved in helping you as I'd hoped. I'm sorry. After hanging up, I sat in my dark apartment, feeling utterly alone. Every attempt to fight back was being met with bigger, more frightening threats. They had money, lawyers, and connections. I had nothing. A week later, I received a certified letter from Child Protective Services. Someone had filed a complaint alleging that I was neglecting Lily, that our living conditions were unsafe, and that I showed signs of mental instability. A social worker would be conducting a home visit in 3 days. I knew immediately who had filed the report. Mom's threat hadn't been empty. I spent those 3 days in a panic, cleaning every inch of my small apartment, organizing Lily's things, gathering documents to prove I was a good mother. When the social worker arrived, a tired-looking woman named Sandra, I showed her everything. The apartment was modest but clean. Lily was healthy, well-fed, and happy. Sandra seemed satisfied, but she said, Mrs. Dawn, we received multiple reports about you. We're required to investigate thoroughly. This isn't closed yet. We'll need to do follow-up visits. Multiple reports? Who else was calling? Sandra couldn't tell me, citing confidentiality. But I knew Mom and Stephanie were orchestrating a campaign to take Lily from me. That night, after I finally got Lily to sleep, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, exhausted from stress, but something made me pick up. A man's deep voice said, Mrs. Dawn, I have information about your husband's death. It wasn't an accident. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? Meet me tomorrow at midnight. The abandoned warehouse on 5th Street. Come alone. Don't tell anyone, or you'll never learn the truth about what happened to Mark. The line went dead. I sat staring at my phone, my mind reeling. Mark's accident wasn't an accident? What did that mean? Was this real? Or was it another trap set by Mom and Stephanie? But what if it was true? What if there was more to Mark's death than I knew? I had to find out. Even though every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, I couldn't sleep that night. By the time midnight the next day approached, I'd made up my mind. I needed answers. I asked Helen to watch Lily, making up an excuse about a late client meeting. Then I drove through the dark streets toward 5th Street. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark and menacing. Every horror movie I'd ever seen flashed through my mind. This was stupid. This was dangerous. But I had to know. I parked and walked toward the building, my heart hammering. A tall figure emerged from the shadows, and I nearly screamed. The man was about 45, with gray at his temples and sharp, intelligent eyes. Mrs. Dawn, I'm Jack Foster. I'm a private investigator. 2 years ago, someone hired me to investigate your husband. Who hired you? He pulled out a folder. Before I show you this, you need to understand something. What I'm about to tell you will change everything. Are you sure you want to know? I nodded, unable to speak. Jack opened the folder and showed me a contract. The person who hired me was your mother, Patricia Carter. She wanted me to dig into Mark's financial affairs, find any secrets. After Mark died, she paid me a substantial amount to keep quiet about what I'd found. But I've had trouble sleeping ever since. Why? What did you find? Mark's death wasn't an accident, Jack said quietly. His brake lines were tampered with. Someone deliberately sabotaged his car. When I reported this to your mother, I expected her to go to the police. Instead, she paid me to bury the information. That's when I realized she might be involved. My legs gave out. Jack caught me and helped me sit on an old crate. My mother murdered Mark? Jack showed me more documents. Mark had a life insurance policy for $1 million. The primary beneficiary was you, but there was a clause. If you died or were declared mentally incompetent, the money would go to Lily's legal guardian. And according to old paperwork Mark had signed years ago, before updating his will, that guardian was listed as your mother. Mom planned to kill Mark, then destroy me so she could control the insurance money through Lily. Jack nodded grimly. I believe your mother has been running this scheme for a long time. She's done similar things to others. I found records of 2 other insurance fraud cases connected to her over the years. But nothing was ever proven. She's clever and patient. My mind spun. Everything I'd been through, every cruelty, was part of a calculated plan to take everything Mark had left behind. Does Stephanie know? Jack pulled out more papers. Yes. I have records of conversations between them. Your sister has been complicit from the beginning. They planned the wedding to be the final humiliation, to push you toward a breakdown so they could claim you were unfit and take Lily. I need to go to the police right now, I said, standing up. Jack handed me a USB drive. Everything is on here. But Dawn, be careful. Your mother has connections. Choose who you trust very carefully. I took the USB and turned to leave. But as I reached my car, I heard a sound that made my blood freeze. A sharp crack echoed through the night. A gunshot. I spun around to see Jack stagger and fall. A figure in dark clothes stood in the warehouse doorway, then disappeared back inside. I screamed and ran toward Jack, but he gasped, "Go! Get out of here! They'll kill you too." I ran to my car, fumbling with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely start the engine. In my rearview mirror, I saw headlights turn on. Someone was following me. I drove as fast as I dared through empty streets, the headlights staying behind me. I swerved around corners, ran a red light, desperate to lose whoever was chasing me. Finally, I ducked into a residential neighborhood and cut my lights, hiding between parked cars. The pursuing vehicle drove past slowly, searching. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure they could hear it. After what felt like hours but was probably minutes, the car drove away. I waited another 20 minutes, then drove home a winding, indirect route, constantly checking my mirrors. When I finally got back to my apartment building, I sat in my car, shaking uncontrollably. I called the police, reporting that I'd heard gunshots at the warehouse and saw someone get shot. They said they'd investigate, but when I checked my purse for the USB drive Jack had given me, my blood ran cold. It was gone. It must have fallen out when I ran, or maybe I never grabbed it in my panic. Either way, the evidence was lost. Morning came too soon. I'd barely slept, jumping at every sound. When I turned on the news, there was no report about a shooting at a warehouse. No body found. No investigation mentioned. It was like last night never happened. Had I imagined it? No. I had the bruise on my arm where I'd fallen running to my car. Jack Foster was real. The shooting was real. But somehow, all evidence had vanished. I drove back to the warehouse in daylight. The building was empty. No police tape. No bloodstains. Nothing. Someone had cleaned up everything. The level of planning and power required to disappear a crime scene like that terrified me. I went home, my mind spinning. I needed to talk to Derek. But when I called, his number went straight to voicemail. I tried 3 more times throughout the day. Nothing. That afternoon, I picked up Lily from Helen's house. My daughter hugged me tightly. "Mommy, you look sad. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, baby," I lied. "How about we make pancakes for dinner?" But as we walked up to our apartment, I saw something that made me stop cold. The door was slightly ajar. I knew I'd locked it. "Stay here," I told Lily, positioning her behind me. I pushed the door open slowly. The apartment had been ransacked. Drawers pulled out. Cushions torn apart. My laptop gone. Someone had been searching for something. I called the police. They came, took a report, but said it looked like a routine burglary. They'd file a report, but not to expect much. They saw this sort of thing all the time in my neighborhood. After they left, I tried to assess what was missing. My laptop. Yes, which had all my work files. Some cash I'd kept hidden in a drawer. But I realized the intruders were probably looking for the USB drive. Thankfully, I didn't have it. Unfortunately, that meant I had no evidence. The next morning, Helen knocked on my door looking upset. "Dawn, I'm so sorry, but your mother was here early this morning. She had some official-looking papers. She said she's Lily's grandmother and has rights to see her. She took Lily." My heart stopped. "What? When?" "About an hour ago. She said she'd cleared it with the courts, that there was some kind of emergency custody order. I'm so sorry. I tried to call you, but your phone went straight to voicemail." I checked my phone. The battery was dead. In my exhausted state last night, I'd forgotten to charge it. By the time I plugged it in and it powered on, I had 15 missed calls from Helen, each more panicked than the last. I drove to Mom's house at dangerous speeds, my hands clenched on the wheel. When I got there, Mom and Stephanie stood on the front porch, blocking the door. Behind them, I could see movement through the window. "Where's my daughter?" I shouted, jumping out of my car. Mom held up papers. "Lily is with me now, where she belongs. I have temporary emergency custody. The court agreed you're mentally unstable and potentially dangerous." "This is insane! You can't do this." Stephanie smiled cruelly. "Actually, we can. You've been acting erratically, making wild accusations, harassing family members. The court had no choice but to protect Lily. I want to see those papers." "I don't believe you." Mom showed me official-looking court documents. They had a judge's signature, dated yesterday. How had they gotten an emergency custody hearing without notifying me? It should have been impossible, but the papers looked legitimate. "Gerald arranged everything," Mom said with satisfaction. "He explained to the judge that you're having a mental breakdown, that you've been making delusional claims about murders and conspiracies." The judge agreed. Lily needed protection. I lunged toward the door, desperate to get to my daughter. Stephanie stepped in front of me. "Get off our property, or we'll call the police for trespassing." "See, I'm not leaving without Lily." Mom pulled out her phone. "One call, Dawn, and you'll be arrested. Then you'll really never see your daughter again. Is that what you want?" Every fiber of my being screamed to fight, to force my way in, to take my child back. But I knew if I got arrested, I'd lose any chance of helping Lily. I needed to think, to find another way. "I'll be back with a lawyer," I said, backing toward my car. "This isn't over." Actually, it is, Mom said coldly. You've lost, Dawn. You've always been a loser. And now everyone knows it. I drove away, tears blurring my vision. I tried calling Derek again. Still nothing. I tried calling lawyers from my phone. But none would take my case without a retainer I couldn't afford. I sat in a parking lot, completely broken, with nowhere left to turn. That's when I saw a police car pull up behind me. An officer approached my window. Ma'am, I need you to step out of the vehicle. What? Why? There's a warrant for your arrest. Assault and trespassing. I hadn't touched anyone. This was another of Mom's lies. But I knew fighting would only make things worse. I stepped out and let them handcuff me. As they drove me to the police station, I wondered if this was rock bottom, or if there was further still to fall. At the station, they put me in an interrogation room. A detective questioned me about the incident at my mother's house, about my claims of conspiracy and murder, about my mental state. Everything I said sounded crazy even to my own ears. A murdered private investigator with no body? A disappearing USB drive? Forged documents and stolen trust funds? The detective looked at me with pity. Mrs. Dawn, I think you need help. Have you considered seeing a therapist? The stress of losing your husband may have affected you more than you realize. A psychiatrist came to evaluate me. She asked questions, made notes, looked concerned. I knew how this looked. I knew they thought I was delusional. But I wasn't. This was all real, wasn't it? After 6 hours, a familiar voice came from outside the interrogation room. That's my client. I'm posting bail. Derek walked in, looking exhausted but determined. Behind him was a professional woman in her late 30s, wearing an expensive suit. Dawn, this is Jennifer Hayes. She's one of the best attorneys in the state. She's going to help us. I wanted to collapse with relief, but I was too tired even for that. Jennifer posted bail, and we left the station. In her car, I finally asked Derek, "Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. I'm sorry. After Stephanie's lawsuit and your mother's smear campaign, I had to go dark to protect my business. But Dawn, I didn't abandon you. I've been working behind the scenes, gathering resources. When I heard about your arrest, I called Jennifer immediately." Jennifer spoke up, her voice crisp and professional. "I've reviewed your case. It's complicated, but we have options. First, we're filing an emergency motion to return Lily to you. The custody order your mother obtained was based on false information. Second, we're going after them for fraud regarding the trust fund. But I don't have evidence," I said. "The USB drive is gone." Jennifer smiled slightly. "You don't have it, but someone else does." She pulled into a parking garage, and we took an elevator to her law office on the 20th floor. In a conference room, a man sat waiting. When he looked up, I gasped. It was Jack Foster, very much alive, with his arm in a sling. "You're okay," I breathed. Jack gave a rueful smile. "Barely. I wore a bulletproof vest that night, because I suspected something might happen. The bullet hit me in the shoulder. Painful, but not fatal. I played dead so they'd leave, then got myself to a hospital. I've been in hiding since, but I kept the evidence safe." He held up a USB drive. "This has everything. All the proof of your mother's crimes, the forged documents, even recordings of conversations between Patricia and Gerald planning how to frame you." I started crying, overwhelmed with relief and exhaustion. "We have a chance?" Jennifer nodded firmly. "We have more than a chance. We're going to destroy them." Over the next week, Jennifer, Derek, and Jack worked around the clock building our case. Jennifer filed motions in court challenging the custody order. She exposed Gerald's conflicts of interest and demanded an investigation into his handling of Mark's estate. She presented evidence of Patricia's fraudulent withdrawals from the trust fund. But every move we made, they countered. Gerald claimed all his actions were legitimate. Mom produced receipts showing she'd spent money on wedding expenses, but claimed the money came from her savings, not the trust fund. They had explanations for everything, plausible enough to create doubt. Meanwhile, I wasn't allowed to see Lily. The temporary custody order remained in place while the court investigated. Every day without my daughter felt like dying slowly. I imagined what Mom was telling her, how she was poisoning Lily against me. Derek's company continued to suffer from the rumors Patricia spread. He lost 2 major contracts because clients didn't want to be associated with scandal. He never complained, never blamed me. But I felt the weight of how much he was sacrificing to help me. 2 weeks after my arrest, Jennifer called an emergency meeting. When we gathered in her office, her expression was grave. They've made another move. Patricia has filed for permanent custody of Lily. She's arguing that even if the financial fraud allegations are true, you're still an unfit mother because you've demonstrated poor judgment, mental instability, and a pattern of putting Lily in danger with your erratic behavior. The hearing is in 3 days. We need to prove definitively that Patricia and Stephanie are guilty of everything we've accused them of, and we need to show the court that you're a capable, stable parent. That's a tall order. Jack spoke up. I have an idea. It's risky, but it might be our best shot at exposing them completely. His plan was audacious. We would set a trap. Jack would contact Gerald, pretending to have evidence that could destroy Patricia, but offering to sell it to them instead. We'd arrange a meeting where they'd incriminate themselves while being recorded. It was exactly the kind of thing that could backfire spectacularly if they suspected anything, but we were out of options and out of time. We agreed to try. Jack made the call to Gerald. I listened on speaker as he pitched his offer. I have documents that prove Patricia orchestrated Mark's murder and the subsequent fraud. I'm willing to sell them to you for $100,000. Cash. Otherwise, they go to the police and the media. Gerald tried to bluff. I don't know what you're talking about. Jack laughed coldly. Don't waste my time. I know you were involved. I know about the forged will, the stolen trust fund, the fake custody order. I have it all. Now, do you want to buy my silence or not? There was a long pause. Let me make some calls. I'll get back to you. An hour later, Gerald called back. We'll meet you. Tomorrow night at 10. Bring everything you have. He gave an address. It was a house on the outskirts of town, isolated and private. Jennifer worried it was too dangerous, but Jack insisted he'd be wired with audio and video equipment. Derek and I would wait nearby with police on standby. The next night felt endless. Derek and I sat in his car 3 blocks from the meeting location. Jack wore sophisticated recording equipment, hidden in his clothes. Police officers were stationed around the area, ready to move in on our signal. Through our earpiece, we heard Jack arrive at the house. Gerald answered the door. A moment later, we heard Patricia's voice, then Stephanie's. They were all there. Show us what you have, Gerald demanded. Jack described the documents, claiming they were in his car. But first, I want to understand something. Why did you do it? Why go to such lengths to destroy Dawn? There was silence. Then Patricia's voice, cold and bitter. Dawn was always the weak one, always needing attention, always playing victim. When she married Mark and suddenly had money and status, it galled me. My older daughter, who was never special, landing a successful husband through pure luck. When I found out about Mark's life insurance and trust fund, I saw an opportunity. Stephanie chimed in. Dawn never appreciated what she had. She didn't deserve Mark. She doesn't deserve Lily. She doesn't deserve anything. So you had Mark killed? Jack pressed. I'm not admitting to that, Patricia said carefully. But let's say Mark's death was convenient for my plans. And let's say I found professionals who could make an accident look like an accident. You can't prove anything. Actually, Jack said, I can. And you just confessed to conspiracy to commit murder on a recording that's being transmitted to police right now. The response was immediate chaos. Shouting. Sounds of a struggle. Derek and I jumped out of the car as police vehicles roared toward the house, lights flashing. We ran toward the commotion. Police burst through the door. Inside, Gerald was trying to grab Jack while Patricia ran for the back door. Stephanie stood frozen, crying. Officers detained all three of them quickly. Jack pulled off his jacket, showing the recording equipment. Got every word. Patricia saw me standing in the doorway and her face twisted with rage. You think you've won? You've destroyed this family. Lily will hate you for this. No, I said quietly. I've saved Lily from you. That's all that matters. As police led them away in handcuffs, Jennifer put her hand on my shoulder. It's over, Dawn. We got them. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind of court appearances, statements to police, and media attention. The story was sensational. Respected retired teacher orchestrates husband's murder to steal life insurance money, then tries to frame grieving widow and steal her child. News vans camped outside the courthouse. Patricia, Gerald, and Stephanie were all denied bail. Considered flight risks. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The recordings from Jack's wire, combined with the financial records, forged documents, and Jack's testimony about being hired to investigate Mark, painted a damning picture. The district attorney charged Patricia with first-degree murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud, theft, forgery, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Gerald faced similar charges as an accomplice. Stephanie was charged with conspiracy, accessory after the fact, and fraud. For me, the most important hearing was the emergency custody matter. Jennifer presented our evidence to the family court judge, showing that the original custody order was obtained through fraud and perjury. The judge was visibly angry at how the system had been manipulated. I'm issuing an immediate order returning Lily to her mother's custody, the judge declared. Mrs. Dawn has been the victim of a sophisticated and malicious conspiracy. There is absolutely no evidence she's an unfit parent. In fact, the evidence shows she's been fighting heroically to protect her daughter, despite extraordinary circumstances. Child Protective Services is directed to close their investigation immediately, with a finding of no abuse or neglect. Furthermore, I'm issuing a protective order against Patricia Carter, Stephanie Carter, and Gerald Thompson. They are to have no contact whatsoever with the minor child. When they brought Lily to me at CPS headquarters, she ran into my arms sobbing. Mommy, I missed you so much. Grandma said you left me, but I knew you wouldn't. I held my daughter, crying into her hair. I would never leave you, baby. Never? I'm so sorry you had to go through this. Lily pulled back, her little face serious. Grandma and Aunt Stephanie were saying mean things about you. I told them they were wrong, but they wouldn't listen. They said you were sick and couldn't take care of me, but I knew they were lying. My heart broke for what she'd endured. You were so brave, sweetheart. It's all over now. We're safe. Derek was there too, and Lily surprised me by hugging him. Thank you for helping my mommy. Derek's eyes got misty. Of course, Lily. Your dad was my best friend. He'd want me to take care of both of you. Over the following weeks, the legal process continued. Patricia's trial was set for 6 months away, but her lawyers advised her to accept a plea deal. She was facing life in prison if convicted of first-degree murder conspiracy. Instead, she pled guilty to reduced charges and received a sentence of 25 years with no possibility of parole. Gerald, as an officer of the court, faced additional penalties. He was disbarred permanently and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Stephanie accepted a plea deal for 8 years, during which she'd have to testify against Patricia if needed. The financial restitution was complicated but ultimately successful. The court ordered all stolen funds returned to Lily's trust, plus additional damages. Mark's full life insurance payout, which Patricia had prevented me from accessing through various legal manipulations, was finally released. Combined with the trust fund that was now secured properly, Lily's future education was guaranteed. I also received compensation from Gerald's malpractice insurance for his role in the fraud. Between everything, I suddenly had financial stability I'd never dreamed of having as a struggling freelance designer. But more than the money, I had justice. I had vindication. I had my daughter back. And I had started to heal. 3 months after Patricia's sentencing, I stood in the living room of our new home. It was a modest 3-bedroom house, in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Nothing extravagant, but it was ours. Lily had her own room, decorated with her drawings, and her favorite stuffed animals. I had a home office where I could work. We had a small backyard, where Lily could play. Most importantly, it felt safe. We could breathe here. I'd enrolled Lily in therapy to help her process the trauma of being taken from me and the things she'd witnessed. The therapist said she was remarkably resilient, but we'd need to watch for signs of anxiety or trust issues as she grew older. I was in therapy too, working through my grief over Mark, the betrayal by my mother and sister, and the trauma of nearly losing everything. My freelance business was thriving now. With the stress of financial instability gone, I could focus on building a real company. I hired 2 other designers, and we took on bigger clients. Work that had once been desperate scrambling for any job became selective projects I actually enjoyed. Derek remained in our lives, a steady, supportive presence. The damage to his company's reputation had gradually healed as the truth of the story came out. If anything, his loyal stand against injustice made him more respected in business circles. He and I spent time together regularly, sometimes with Lily, sometimes just the 2 of us. Our relationship was evolving into something deeper than friendship, but we were taking it slowly. Both of us had been through too much to rush into anything. But I could see a future where Derek might become more than Mark's friend who saved us. He might become part of our family. One Saturday afternoon, Derek took Lily to the park while I caught up on some work. When they returned, Lily was chattering excitedly about the ducks they'd fed and the swings she'd gone on. Derek met my eyes over her head and smiled, and I felt a warmth in my chest I hadn't experienced in years. That evening, after Lily was in bed, Derek and I sat on the porch with cups of tea. It was a cool evening, the first hint of autumn in the air. "How are you really doing?" Derek asked. "I know you say you're fine, but after everything you went through, it's okay not to be fine." I considered his question carefully. Honestly, some days are harder than others. I have nightmares sometimes, dreams where I've lost Lily again and can't find her. I wake up panicking until I check her room and see her sleeping safely. The therapist says that's normal, that it'll fade with time. I'm also angry, I admitted. Angry at my mother for being capable of such cruelty. Angry at Stephanie for going along with it. Angry at myself for not seeing the signs earlier, for trusting them when I shouldn't have. Derek nodded. That's all understandable. They betrayed you in the worst possible way. But I'm also grateful, I continued. Grateful for you, for Jack, for Jennifer. Grateful that we won. Grateful that Lily is safe, and we have a future. The anger and the gratitude exist side by side, and I'm learning that's okay. I don't have to have it all figured out. Mark would be proud of you, Derek said softly. He always said you were the strongest person he knew. I didn't understand what he meant until I saw you fight for Lily. You never gave up, even when everything seemed hopeless. Tears pricked my eyes. I miss him. I wish he could see Lily now. See how she's growing. I wish he knew about the trust fund he set up, and how it saved us in the end. Just like he wanted to protect us. I think he knows, Derek said. And I think he'd be glad I was here to help when you needed it. That's what friends do. That's what family should do. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Derek said, I've been thinking about something. I want to establish a foundation in Mark's name. Something that helps widows and widowers who are struggling, particularly those being taken advantage of by unscrupulous lawyers or family members. What happened to you shouldn't happen to anyone. Maybe we can help prevent it. My heart swelled. That's a beautiful idea. Mark would love that. Will you help me run it? Derek asked. Your experience, your insight into what victims need. It would be invaluable. I would be honored, I said. Over the next months, we worked on establishing the Mark Carter Foundation. It provided legal aid, financial counseling, and emotional support for surviving spouses dealing with complex estate issues or family betrayal. Our first client was a woman whose in-laws were trying to claim her house, arguing their son would have wanted them to have it. We helped her find a good lawyer and secure her home. Each person we helped felt like we were honoring Mark's memory, turning my pain into something positive for others. Lily adjusted remarkably well to our new life. She made friends at school, joined an art class, and seemed happy. She asked about her grandmother and aunt only once. I told her the truth in age-appropriate terms, that sometimes people make very bad choices and have to face consequences, and that it was okay to feel sad about losing them, but also okay to feel safe now that they couldn't hurt us anymore. She thought about that for a moment, then said, I'm sad Grandma was mean, but I'm happy you're my mom. That simple statement nearly broke me. I'm happy too, baby. So happy. A year after everything happened, Derek and I took Lily to visit Mark's grave. We'd gone several times before, but this visit felt different. I told Mark about everything that had happened, about how his trust fund had saved us, about how Derek had protected us the way Mark would have wanted. Thank you for choosing Derek as your best friend, I said softly. Thank you for planning ahead even when we were young and thought we had forever. You're still taking care of us. Even now. Lily placed flowers on the grave. I love you, Daddy. Mommy tells me stories about you every night. We stood there for a while, the three of us, remembering and honoring the man who'd brought us all together. As we walked back to the car, Lily between us holding both our hands, I realized something. I'd lost so much. My husband, my mother, my sister, years of my life to grief and struggle. But I'd also gained things I never expected. Strength I didn't know I had. True friends who stood by me when it mattered. Justice, eventually, when I'd almost stopped believing in it. And the absolute certainty that I would do anything, fight anyone, overcome any obstacle to protect my daughter. The scars would always be there. The betrayal would always hurt when I thought about it. But I was healing. We were building a good life. And for the first time since Mark died, I felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Derek squeezed my hand gently. Dinner at that new Italian place Lily's been asking about? Lily jumped excitedly. Can I get spaghetti? You can get whatever you want, sweetheart, I said. As we drove toward the restaurant, Lily chattering happily in the back seat, I thought about how far we'd come. From that horrible moment at the wedding, standing humiliated in front of strangers while my own family mocked me, to this moment of simple happiness. It had been a brutal journey, but we'd made it through. I'd learned that family isn't always the people you're born to. Sometimes family is the people who choose to stand beside you when everything falls apart. Derek chose us. Jack chose to help us. Jennifer chose to fight for us. They became our family, when my blood relatives proved they never truly were. I'd also learned that you're stronger than you think you are. When they took Lily, I thought I'd break completely. But instead, I fought. I refused to give up. I found resources I didn't know existed and strength I'd never tapped into before. Every mother has that fierce, protective instinct, but you don't know how powerful it is until you're tested. Most importantly, I learned that justice isn't always swift, but it can still come. There were so many moments when I thought they'd won, that they were too clever and too connected for me to beat. But truth has a way of coming out eventually, if you're brave enough to keep pushing for it. Now I share my story not for sympathy, but as a reminder to anyone facing similar situations. If you're being abused, betrayed, or manipulated by family members, it's not your fault. If people are trying to convince you you're crazy or unstable when you're actually seeing the truth, trust yourself. If they're using the legal system to hurt you, find help. Organizations and people exist who can support you. Don't give up. Fight for yourself. Fight for your children. Fight for justice. It might take time. It might be harder than anything you've ever done, but you're worth fighting for. As we pulled into the restaurant parking lot, I looked at Lily's excited face in the rearview mirror, and Derek's warm smile beside me, and I felt grateful. Not grateful for the pain, but grateful for surviving it. Grateful for learning who I really was in the fire. Grateful for the life we were building together. The nightmare was over. The healing continued, and the future stretched ahead of us, full of possibility. So I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to cut toxic family members out of your life? How did you find the strength to do it? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's struggling with a similar situation right now. And if this story resonated with you, if it made you think about resilience or justice or the true meaning of family, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories about real people overcoming extraordinary challenges. Share this video with someone who might need to hear this message today. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our struggles makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community. May you find the courage to stand up for yourself when you need it most. And may you always remember that you're stronger than you know. Take care of yourselves and each other. Until next time.